إني على ثقة من طريقي إلى الله رب السنا والشروق، فإن عافني السوق أو عاقني فإني أمين لعهد الوثيق، فإني أمين لعهد الوثيق.
The Shuruh is a book that I have personally read and lived with for over a decade. Within its delightful pages and illuminating chapters, I found a unique and compelling experience towards an elevated way of living, just like the companions of the Messenger of Allah. From this book, I learned all the main issues that concern those who work to revive Islam, for it handles education and development, both at the individual level and as a group of people. This book truly teaches one to live with the Quran and the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah. This commentary and explanations of Sayyid Qutub's Milestones should be considered a new chapter in the world of the Islamic movement. We find many today who love Allah and His Messenger, and they see how greatly mankind is suffering and in misery because humanity has strayed far from Islam. They know that the only solution is to return back to Islam, but how? Answering this question really lies at the heart of this book, as it explains in real practical terms what is the core Islamic ideology, or Tawheed, as derived from the Quran and the Sunnah, and as the companions of the Messenger of Allah understood it. Furthermore, this book gives a real practical way of making this ideology come alive through the implementation of the proper Islamic methodology of establishing Islam as a living reality in one's inner self, his family, his community and nation, just as the Messenger of Allah and his companions had achieved over 1400 years ago. This commentary actually teaches us to live directly with the Quran and the tradition of the Messenger of Allah, so that we may live up to our noble responsibility of establishing Islam on earth once again. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. All praise be due to Allah, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon His final messenger, Muhammad. All praise be to Allah. After much anticipation and yearning, our group, the Proclaimers of the Truth, has published the book, the Shuruh, Commentary and Explanation of Sayyid Qutub's Milestones. You can find this book on our website, published chapter by chapter. This book was written by the leader of the Proclaimers of the Truth, Sheikh Mustafa Kamil Muhammad. In this book, Sheikh Mustafa has shared with us his understanding and vast experiences with the Islamic call, as well as his long life with the Holy Quran. The Shuruh is a commentary on the famous book, the Milestones. We are all familiar with the Milestones. This is the excellent book written by Sayyid Qutub just before his martyrdom. And now, by Allah's grace, the Shuruh, or Sheikh Mustafa's commentary, represents the practical implementation of the milestones in today's reality. If Allah wills, the Shuruh will be a reference and a guide for all those who want to work for this religion, to establish Islam in its complete form on the face of the earth. This book is unique, and not like any other commentary published on other books. Without exaggeration, it is truly one of a kind. This is the honest truth acknowledged by all who have read and studied this commentary. There are many factors that give this book, the Shuruh, its uniqueness. These are outlined in the foreword to the book, and I would like to share them with you. So first, the commentator is a student of the original author of the Milestones, Sayyid Qutub. There was a strong personal bond between Sheikh Mustafa and his teacher, Sayyid Qutub. The direct reception of the fundamental truths of this religion and the personal inquiries and consultations with his teacher made Sheikh Mustafa Kamil the most capable of understanding the meaning behind Sayyid Qutub's words in his many books. Sheikh Mustafa is indeed the most capable person in expressing Sayyid Qutub's ideas and goals in detail. Thus, having such a student compile a commentary and explanation for Milestones undoubtedly makes the Shuruh a unique book. Second, Sheikh Mustafa did not remain idle. He formed a group seeking to call people to Allah's religion, thereby immediately applying the Milestones in real life. This undoubtedly allowed him to attain depths of knowledge and understanding that he could not have attained had he remained idle with what his teacher had taught him. This commentary and explanation, the Shuruh, comes after lengthy experiences in which Sheikh Mustafa formed, nurtured, and led an Islamic group. It is only when one applies ideas and concepts in real life does he truly understand them. This real-life application is the insight that Sheikh Mustafa has brought to the Shuruh. Third, Sheikh Mustafa nurtured this group with the proper methodology based on the Quran and the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah. May Allah's peace be on him. Sheikh Mustafa nurtured this group comprehensively. He did not overlook any aspect of discipline, be it in intellectual understanding of Islam, or in the practical implementation of his teachings, or in the conveyance of the Islamic call. He also disciplined the group in spiritual, emotional, social, moral, and behavioral matters. Certainly, to nurture and teach someone requires disciplining oneself. This is well known by all who have lived for a cause, called others to join, and tried to raise those who have accepted their call. Most importantly, the Shuruh and the Milestones itself develop a program for the Islamic movement, all based on the primary sources of Islam, the Quran and the life tradition of the Messenger of Allah, or the Sunnah. Our fourth point, or fourth factor, making this commentary so special is the length of time that it took to interact, nurture, and raise the group. This group, now called the Proclaimers of the Truth, was nurtured for more than 4 decades. So this book and its thoughts have matured all throughout this time. This long period allowed the commentator to understand the human self and the factors that allowed it to elevate to the highest levels. When you read this Shuruh, you will find a scholar specialized in nurturing the human soul and curing its diseases, and who takes great concern in purifying it internally and externally. So what do I mean by internally? So that the caller may have a clean heart with pure intentions and be rid of all the diseases that affect the soul, and that his heart may be filled with pure feelings and love for all that is good for humanity. And what I mean by externally is that so that the appearance of the call attracts those being called to the beautiful aesthetics of Islam. Indeed, as the Messenger of Allah has said, Allah is beautiful and He loves beauty. This is one of the key elements to this book. It presents a persistent struggle in trying to discipline and nurture and raise individuals during a lengthy period. And it does this with the strong determination that accepts nothing less than elevating the human self to its fullest potential. These aspects give this Shuruh a unique touch and feel. Our fifth factor, one of the issues that Sheikh Mustafa focuses on while nurturing the group, is understanding the nature of the conflict between the truth and falsehood. The reader of the Shuruh will clearly see the extensive effort Sheikh Mustafa spent in aiding the members of the group to comprehend all that happens around them. The Shuruh clarifies the extent of the devious and well-planned plots carried out by the enemies of Islam. These plots have been working to eradicate the truths of Islam from people's lives while leaving enough superficial aspects to have them believe that their Islam is pure and untouched. These and other factors make this Shuruh unique in its essence. The different elements of this Shuruh formed during a lifetime of struggle. This started learning from Sayyid Qutub, then followed by nurturing the group on various matters explained in the Shuruh over many years. The Shuruh documents the emotions, the thoughts, and ideas and all the fruits of experience accumulated over a long period of living with the Quran and the reality of Allah's divinity. The Shuruh gives us the benefit of the experiences of one who has been calling others to Islam and nurturing different types of people, each needing to be understood and cared for in a special way. The Shuruh attempts to elevate Muslims to be a group, truly working for the sake of Islam, just as the companions of the Messenger of Allah. The reader of this book, the Shuruh, Commentary and Explanations of Sayyid Qutub's Milestones, will find all that is needed in elevating themselves to the levels worthy of Allah's satisfaction and the call to Islam. Indeed, the Shuruh encompasses topics that are vital for every caller to Islam. And here I will mention a few examples. So the first essential topic covered in the Shuruh is the proper and correct Islamic way of thought. Whoever reads the Shuruh will find true understanding based on the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Messenger, may Allah's peace and blessings be on him. They will learn to think like the companions of the Messenger and grasp how they understood the great reality of the divinity of Allah and the other great truths of Islam. This is a deep and comprehensive understanding, in line with the methodology of the Quran that speaks directly and simultaneously to the human soul, to the mind, and to the senses. The Shuruh removes all confusion over meanings and concepts which have become distorted and altered from how they were properly understood by the first generation of the Messenger's companions, what Qutub called the unique Quranic generation. Here's a specific example. So this book explains the mistakes that modern day scholars make when they make the historic rulings made by our righteous predecessors who are living in a Muslim society that submitted to Allah's sovereignty and try to apply these today. So unfortunately, many today try to apply these historic rulings on our current societies. And this is a mistake, because these rulings were meant for a society that was embracing Islam. Whereas the societies that we live in today are actually rejecting Allah's law and instead accept man-made laws, ideologies, and systems. This is a critical mistake, which leads many to fall into misjudgments and improper applications of Islamic rulings. So the Shuruh explains how this approach is flawed and has disastrous consequences for the Islamic movement. So the second essential topic covered in the Shuruh deals with the methodology that is fitting for the way of thinking in Islam. Just as the way of thinking and ideology of Islam are from Allah, so is the methodology of applying Islam. Just as Islam is a divine religion, so too is its methodology, a divine methodology. They are in essence intertwined, where one cannot be without the other. Islam, its beliefs and fundamental concepts cannot be dissociated from methodology of application. Therefore, it does not come as a surprise for Islam's methodology to be unique, because it is indeed the methodology of Allah. The Shuruh focuses on explaining Islam's methodology in shaping the soul and forming the Muslim society. It also explains in clarity the wisdom behind the Islamic methodology and the dangers of deviating from this methodology. The Shuruh gives many examples of how erroneous methodologies have prevented people from understanding the truth of Islam and properly applying their religion. So the third essential topic covered in the Shuruh deals with the issue of upbringing, nurture, and discipline. The Shuruh is a unique book in that it focuses on nourishing, upbringing, and disciplining the individual as well as the Islamic group. This is what we call tarbiyah. In the Shuruh, we found deep knowledge of the human soul. We found knowledge of its strengths and its weaknesses, how it can deceive itself, as well as how its diseases are and how the cures should be. This book is by no means theoretical. Rather, it speaks to the soul and encourages it to elevate by means of persistent striving. As a result, an honest and sincere reader of the Shuruh will come to know himself and will stock up in what will aid him to reach the highest levels that Allah intended for him. Additionally, the book discusses various aspects of group discipline, such as the brotherhood in the faith and the building blocks of the Islamic group. The Shuruh also discusses the Islamic household, its defining characteristics, its appearance, its inward and outward beauty. The beauty in its openness and its privacy, its cleanliness and purity, in the shared feelings and emotions, in upholding honesty and justice. So this book discusses how the Islamic household should become a beacon of guidance for all of humanity. So the fourth essential topic covered in the Shuruh is the development of the call to Islam. The caller to Islam should be done in an Islamic manner, pushing him to strive in the way of Allah, thus presenting to people the correct image of Allah's religion. The Shuruh is a beacon of light, originating from a deep understanding of the Quran. It lights the way for callers to Islam as it focuses first and foremost on developing and nurturing the caller himself. So it also focuses on how critical it is for the caller to enter Islam comprehensively, because the call to Islam is not a career nor a hobby, and neither is it a normal routine. No, it is much more important than this. So the Shuruh defines the Islamic call as a necessity of the belief which every Muslim must strive for and accept Allah's command. The Islamic call begins by nurturing the caller in an Islamic manner and pushing him to strive in the way of Allah, thus presenting to people the correct image of Allah's religion. So the fifth essential topic covered in the Shuruh is the conflict between the truth and falsehood. The Shuruh grabs its reader's attention as it clarifies the conflict between the truth and falsehood, between Islam and Jahiliyyah. So it characterizes the soldiers of Allah and the soldiers of falsehood. This book also explains how we should perceive and understand the current reality of this conflict from the proper Islamic perspective. And the sixth essential topic covered in the Shuruh is developing a life in the way of Allah and in the comfort of the noble Quran and its guidance. So whoever reads the Shuruh will find a strong urge within himself to live in the way of Allah and to live in the comfort of the noble Quran. Indeed, the Shuruh motivates and inspires its readers to shape themselves into that which pleases Allah in order to attain this exquisite and noble life worthy of a Muslim. Before I conclude this introduction, I want to give you an example from the Shuruh itself and the commentaries' way in approaching the cases which were discussed by Sayyid Qutub in his Milestones. So carefully observe the fine meaning in these words by Sayyid Qutub in the introduction to the Milestones. So in the Milestones, Qutub writes these words: "It is imperative for the group who decides to re-establish Islam afresh to have milestones. These milestones will teach them the characteristics of their role, the real job that is waiting for them, and the goals that they are striving to achieve in the long run. These milestones will help them understand where to start their long journey, the nature of their stance towards Jahiliyyah that has spread all over the earth, and what type of relationships they should have within the society that they live, when to cooperate with others, and when to separate from them. These milestones will also help Islamic advocates understand what are their characteristics and what are the characteristics of the Jahiliyyah surrounding them, how they will address Jahiliyyah with the language of Islam, and what issues they will present. In addition, they will clearly know their source for determining all these milestones and the manner of approaching the source of guidance. So it is very important that these milestones are firmly established on the Quran, as this is the ultimate source of the Islamic creed. It is also important to understand how the Quran guided the first generation that Allah chose for His religion, and how they transformed the history of the world we live in. So here, Qutub is outlining the basic methodology by which the Muslim group should begin establishing the religion of Islam on the earth, as they are commanded by Allah. This is in essence a blueprint for the Islamic movement. So to comment on what Sayyid Qutub had written in the Milestones, Sheikh Mustafa writes these words. First, the first important milestone is to recognize the characteristics of their role, or the nature of the duty which is leadership, that is leading mankind to Allah and to His guidance. They must realize that they have inherited an enormous and critical task. So they never should lessen or diminish from the nature of their roles nor themselves. They must be full of confidence and comprehend the immensity of their job. So too, the second milestone is understanding the real job that is waiting for them, which is to communicate Allah's message and to guide mankind to this truth. This is their duty, and this is the most glorious duty a person can fulfill. It had been the duty of the messengers of Allah. The third milestone is to be aware of the goal, which is to be a devoted servant of Allah. The fourth is to be aware of where to start their long journey, the starting point of delivering the message, which is to begin with the core fundamental beliefs of Islam, summarized by the great truth and testimony, there is no deity except Allah. Fifth is the nature of their stance towards Jahiliyyah that has spread all over the earth, which is to clearly identify their position toward Jahiliyyah, being isolated and distinguished from Jahiliyyah. And the sixth is to recognize what type of relationships they will have within the society they live. Where will they meet and where do they separate from others? Which is practically understanding where to cross paths with the people and where to separate, hence the issue of loyalty and enmity. The Islamic group must be aware of how to deal and cooperate with the people when they depart, and the basis by which this is determined. The seventh is to be aware of the characteristics and the characteristics of the Jahiliyyah surrounding them. This can be described as recognizing the current reality. It is imperative for the vanguard to know the current reality very well, to know their own characteristics, then to know the characteristics of Jahiliyyah surrounding them in order to determine the distance between themselves and Jahiliyyah, and also determine the starting point in dealing with Jahiliyyah. The eighth is to recognize how they will address Jahiliyyah with the language of Islam and what issues they will present. This is essentially the methodology of the Islamic movement. We have to be keenly mindful of the methodology when addressing Jahiliyyah. Not every speech and communication is proper, and not every starting point and engagement is correct. Similarly, we cannot condone any and all methods to address Jahiliyyah. Application of the appropriate methodology is what distinguishes between all Islamic movements. The ninth is that they will clearly know their source for determining all of these milestones, and that these milestones are firmly established on the Quran, as this is the ultimate source of the Islamic creed. This is the highly important issue of being aware of where and how to receive guidance. Determining the source that will establish the truth and guide us to the proper methodology is a very important matter. And lastly, the 10th is the manner of approaching the source of guidance and how the Quran guided the first generation that Allah chose for this religion and how they transformed the history of the world. This is to be aware of how and with what spirit Islam was initially established by the first shining group, the chosen group, the companions of the Messenger of Allah. Allah indeed used them to establish Islam as He willed. The companions are the perfect example that we should be following when applying the fundamentals of Islam. We have to see how they developed themselves and how they established Islam as a living reality. We see how Omar, may Allah be pleased with him, transformed from Omar the rigid and violent and arrogant to the guided scholar, leader, and merciful servant of Allah. How did this transformation take place? How did Khalid bin Walid, may Allah be pleased with him too, transform from being an enemy of Islam to Allah's drawn sword, struggling for the sake of Islam? What I have said so far is but a simple example showing how Sheikh Mustafa explained the book, the Milestones. The reader of the Shuruh will find many truths of Islam and its relevant concepts such as culture and civilization, jihad, the methodology of receiving, and the nature of the way. The proper comprehension and explanation of these principles is a breakthrough in Islamic education, particularly in our own day when they have been distorted and deprived of their true meanings. This in turn has made it hard for those desiring to apply Islam to know the proper way and methodology of establishing Islam in reality. So whoever wishes to benefit can read the Shuruh. So we invite all of you, dear listener, to follow up on the presentation to the chapters of this book, published on the official website of the group, the Proclaimers of the Truth. And our final supplication is in praise of Allah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
وإني على ثقة من طريقي إلى الله رب السنا والشروق فإن عافني السوق أو عاقني فإني أمين لعهد الوثيق